You are now rocking with the best. Welcome to Shut Up and Talk. Tell you exactly who we are and Shut Up and Talk. What we are not is the traditional media, which is led by reporters, journalists, huge corporations. What we are not is the new quote-unquote new media, which is player-led, which is a bunch of bullshit. And what we are not is the fandom media, which is led by those who produce content because they're fans of a team or fans of a player. We are none of that bullshit. And this is why. What we are fans of the game, the entirety of the game. From the coaching, to the players, to the drafting, to the building of teams, to cutting players, picking up players, the historical references in regards to context of the game. The entire game is what we want to focus on. No, we're not the fandom media. This is not let me get a tattoo of TB12. We're none of that shit. Even though TB12 is a great player. This is not the new media, the player-led media. Now, player-led media is great because they give a perspective of what it's like to play in the game. But outside of that perspective, it's full of shit. The awareness or the willingness to critique the game or critique players in the game is so sad that it's almost faker than the traditional media. Now, traditional media, I'm sure a lot of these people want to say things, but because they work for Fox or CBS or ESPN, they have to come on and push an agenda. And that agenda distorts the facts of how good a player is, the situation that he's in, and the narrative becomes blurred. And they do this because of the fucking fans. You fans believe anything. But if you take a deeper dive and look into the details, you get more clarity on the situation. So, welcome to, once again, Shut Up and Talk. Let's talk a little bit about musical chairs and where I think the quarterbacks will land in the 2024 free agent frenzy coming up next week. So let's talk a little bit about the Minnesota Vikings. Now, the Minnesota Vikings, what they say is Kirk Cousins, he's a process guy. He wants to get to free agency and he wants to look at the process and find out what's available and then come back and weigh all of his options. Now, that sounds really great. And I actually like what the Vikings are saying. But we must understand what the Vikings are saying, that's PR. That's public relations. They can't say Kirk Cousins is asking for too much fucking money and he made a ton of money for us to get beat in the first round or not make the playoffs at all. Fuck that. We can take that money and go and get defensive players, a mid-tier quarterback, and coach him up. Offensive line. They can do other things with that money, but they have to play the game because the fucking fans, you guys bitch about everything that the team does. So they have to play that game. But listen, Kirk Cousins is out of there. If they wanted him, they could have signed him before his contract was up. This is about Kirk Cousins going to the Falcons. Now, the Falcons, their coaching staff is from the Rams. KO, the head coach of the Vikings, is from the Rams. It doesn't take a genius to connect the dots. It takes no brain power to connect these dots. Kirk Cousins is going to the Atlanta Falcons. Atlanta Falcons have the cap space, they have the situation, they have the coaching staff in place, and they have the draft picks to add to what they already have. Outside of this, this being March 8th and not March 11th, that's the only thing stopping us from hearing the news that Kirk Cousins is actually going to the Atlanta Falcons. You can book it. It's a done deal. Now, let's say, for example, somehow there's another team that sort of sneaks in there and goes after Kirk Cousins. If that were the case, I would say financially it would have to fit. And there's not a lot of financial teams with the financial flexibility that could pay Kirk Cousins and that would be willing to pay him, and also that Kirk would be willing to go to. Sure, the Patriots have the cap space, but if you're Kirk, you tell me where you would go. Money's the same or similar, but look at who you're playing with and who you're not playing with. You just don't leave Justin Jefferson and go sign up to go play with Kendrick Bourne. No offense to Kendrick Bourne, I like Kendrick Bourne. He's a great player, or a good player. I'm sorry, but you don't do shit like that. Okay? Kirk Cousins is going to the Falcons. Stop with this Justin Fields shit. I like Justin Fields. Hell, I'm black. I root for Justin Fields. But let's stop trying to create Mike Vick 2.0. Let's stop with it. Okay? Michael Vick is Michael Vick. And every time somebody's black and they can run, they don't need to go to Atlanta. In fact, I don't have the stats in front of me, but I believe Justin Fields has maybe won 10 to 12 games his entire career. Now keep in mind, he's played 3 years already. He's won 10 to 12 games his entire career. Now we can blame the Bears, we can blame the coaches, you can blame whoever you want to blame. But the fact is, he ain't that good. I think he could be decent. He could be a B+ quarterback for sure, with some great highlights. But someone's going to have to put him in the system to where it's much more basic, and he doesn't have to sit back and be a precision passer. So whatever coaching staff can do that's where he needs to go. As far as the Bears getting a 1 or 2 for Fields, come on, let's stop it. Teams aren't stupid. They're gonna stay. They know eventually when free agency starts, the Bears are gonna have a hard time getting a good return for Fields, because some of those teams that need quarterbacks will fill that position. Okay? So when the position is filled, that's less options, which means less leverage, which means less in return for Fields. The Bears pretty much have from today, which is March 8th, up into, I would say, Sunday, right before free agency starts. The best deal for Fields comes now. Now they can hold, but if they hold, they're probably not going to get a good deal. And even now, I would say they get a third for him, maybe a fourth. They'll get more than what Trey Lance went for, but not much more. Okay, they'll get more than what Trey Lance went for, but not much more. Now, since we're talking Vikings, or to circle back to the Vikings, I think the Vikings with KO and Kwesi, I think they look at the value, and I either think they go with Darnold. I think Darnold's a good option there. Darnold just spent a year with Shanahan. I think he's definitely a good option, strong option for them. I think they could potentially go Mayfield if something happens with the Bucs and things don't go the way that maybe Baker thought they would go. I think they could potentially go Mayfield if the price is not too high. And I think a sleeper would be someone like a Jameis Winston, maybe. I wouldn't bank on that one, but I think that could be a sleeper. I don't really see Russell there. I think before they went Russell, they'd probably go draft. And I think they could definitely draft a QB and develop that QB and have something going there. I wouldn't even rule out someone like a Carson Wentz, to be honest with you. Wouldn't be a fan favorite. Traditional media would would just bitch about it. And they would kill this scenario, I'm sure. They would criticize the scenario of Carson Wentz going to the Vikings. I also think the player-led media, this new media, I think they would also do the same, because they're going to take it for what we've seen out of Wentz, the narrative. But the reality is, he spent last year as a backup damn, my mind's going blank now. He spent last year as a backup for the Rams with Matt Stafford, Sean McVay, and it wouldn't be a stretch for him to be there with KO, knowing that he has an understanding of the system. We kind of saw the way that he played last year against the Niners in a game that they needed, but they didn't necessarily need it, but a game that I think he needed. And also the same thing with Sam Darnold. He was in that game as well, playing against the Rams. Both quarterbacks played well. And you can see what happens when someone is put in a good situation with a good play caller, with a good head coach, and how that can really change the dynamic and eventually change the narrative of that player. And I also think that the Vikings are witnessing what the Jared Goff situation, where the Lions continued to pour into Jared Goff, believe in him, coach him up, believe in him, put talent around him, and now you would have to consider the Lions one of the best teams in the entire NFL, easily. And they're about to add more talent this year. There's no reason why the Vikings couldn't try something similar.